Hey guys, last time we talked about some basics, claim, truth, and contradiction, and today we're going to be talking about claim types. Now, at some point in the previous lesson, I had mentioned that not all claims are equal. There are different types of claims. And today we're going to really hone in on that. So, when you're talking about types of claims, I think it's helpful to always have two related questions in mind. The first question is, what is the claim about? Or rather, what type of thing is the claim about? And the second question is, how would one go about verifying or falsifying the claim? And the answer to those two questions is going to determine the type of claim it is. Now, there are three general types of claims that we are going to be going over today. And like always, they contain words that sound familiar, but that we have to parse out a little bit more technically. So, the first type of claim is what we would call an empirical claim. Now, probably you've heard the word empirical if you've ever taken a science class, right? You talk about empirical study, empirical data, and all that good stuff. Now, when you see the word empirical, what you want to remember is that it refers to your senses, right? To call something empirical is to say that it has a certain relationship to human sensory apparatus, right? So, for example, in epistemology, which is a branch of philosophy, empiricism is the position that all knowledge is ultimately founded upon sense experience. When scientists talk about empirical data, they're talking about things that are observable or otherwise measurable through sensory means. So if we refer back to those questions that I just gave you guys, what is it about and how can we go about verifying it? We would say that an empirical claim is about perceivable phenomena out in the world. For example, if I looked outside and I said, it is windy right now, that's an empirical claim, right? Because it's a claim about some phenomena, right, out in the world. And when I say out in the world, I think that's key because empirical claims are always going to be about things that are like out, right? They're like outer phenomena. They're publicly accessible. So you could look at the tree, someone else can listen to hear if it's windy, someone else could like put their finger out the window to feel if wind is blowing. The idea is that there's something happening out in the world, externally is another way of saying that, and I'm making a claim about those things. So the next part would be to ask yourself, all right, if I make a claim about perceivable phenomena, how would you go about checking if it's true, right? Like if I said to you, it's windy outside right now, right? Or better yet, I'll do something more concrete. The tree branch right outside my window is blowing in the wind. If I said that, how would you go about demonstrating that that claim was true or false? Well, the answer would be you would perceive it, right? You would use your senses. And that's the key, right? That's what makes a claim empirical. It's about perceivable phenomena, and it is verified or falsified via the senses. So I could look outside of the branch. I could listen to see if the branch is blowing. I could put my hand outside the window and see if there's wind or something like that. And empirical claims are super common. Like probably most claims you make are empirical claims. Oh, there's a bug over there in the corner. There's not. I would be freaked out. Oh, the painting in here is lower than where you used to hang it. Or, oh, the peanut butter is in the cabinet. Or something like that, right? Or the stove is hot if you put your hand on it. Those are all empirical claims. The leaves of trees are green in the summer and spring, and then they turn white and pink. Sorry, they're green in the summer, they turn white and pink in the spring, and then they turn yellow, orange, and red in the fall, right? All empirical claims, because they're all about stuff out in the world, and the way you go about verifying or falsifying them is by using your senses. And these are all very simple examples, but empirical claims can be more complex, and what I mean by that is if you say something like, between 1929 and 1931, X amount of people lost their jobs. That's an empirical claim. It's not a simple thing like the marker is black. It's about an event or a series of events, right? It's not about one thing. It's about many things happening, right? And you're making a claim about that whole historical event. That's of course an empirical claim, because how do you know if that's true? Well, you check the data. It's like how many people were in the workforce before this thing happened, and how many people were in the workforce after this thing happened, and how many of those decreased numbers were directly a result of the thing happening, right? This is all research you have to do about stuff out in the world. Or if you said something like, Thomas Jefferson believed in God, right? Thomas Jefferson was a theist. Like, well, we would check his journals, we would check things he wrote down, and see if that was actually the case. Or there are a bunch of things you could say, like, when you touch snow, it's cold, right? Or water freezes at less than 32 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever, right? Like, that's an empirical claim about stuff that happens out in the world, and you can only know if that's true or not by testing it by perceivable means. And the perception isn't always direct, right? Like scientists, for example, will use machines to detect wavelengths, of light that we can't see directly from our eyes. But it's the same kind of thing. It's like you're using the senses to view the machines that indirectly measure these things out in the world. All empirical stuff, okay? But not all claims are empirical. And I'll give you an example. So if I said something like, Bill has math class at 3 o'clock. You say, okay, it's about something out in the world and I can check it. But then if I said something like, all triangles have 3 sides, is that an empirical claim? And you might be tempted at first to say, yeah, because you're like, oh, well, a triangle is a thing out in the world, and you're like checking, but is that really the case? Where are these triangles out in the world that you're looking at to verify the claim, all triangles have 3 sides? And of course the answer is they don't exist, right? Because when you say all triangles have 3 sides, you're not just referring to like a set of objects. You're talking about the concept of triangle, and you are defining the concept or explaining some aspect of the definition or something that necessarily follows from the definition, right? You're talking about principles, you're talking about ideas. Or if I said 2 plus 2 is 4, like, are you looking out in the world for the number 2 and like looking at all the additions in the world? No, because there are no number 2s in the world, and there are no addition signs out in the world or anything like that. So there's this other type of claim that we call rational. And rational claims, let me back up, because I know you're thinking this, that doesn't mean good. Like, rational in the proper context does not mean good. It doesn't mean correct or right. And people always get confused about that because they think like, oh, but rational means, if he says like that's rational, he's saying it's true or it's good or something. We got to dig down like very fundamentally here. And the word rational means pertaining to reason and reason alone. If you look in the history of philosophy, right? Empirical claims are claims that pertain to sensory experience. Rational claims are claims that pertain to the faculty of reason alone. And so we say rational claims are about not perceivable phenomena out in the world, rather about concepts and definitions. Or ideas, right? They're not about concrete things. This is another way of thinking about them. They're about abstract things. Like the number 2 is an abstraction because it's not something you touch. It's something you think about. Or triangle. It's not like something you touch. That's a concept that you think about. So rational claims are about abstract concepts and definitions. Right? They're about principles and relations between those ideas. And so if you think about, all triangles have 3 sides. 2 plus 2 is 4. Or even 2 plus 2 is 5. You say that's false. Why? Why is that false? What is your means of verification or falsification? And you would see it's different than this. Because if I say the tree is blowing, you have to go check, right? But when I say all triangles have 5 sides, you know that's wrong right off the bat. Not because you went out in the world and checked all these triangles hidden in places and counted all their sides. No, merely because you thought about the definition. So these things are verified or falsified merely by thinking about definitions. And that can mean one definition or thinking about the relationship between certain definitions. So one definition would be all triangles have 3 sides. And you're like, yep, that's the definition of a triangle. Or all triangles have 5 sides. Nope, that's not the definition of a triangle. But you can also relate definitions, and that's also a rational claim. So if I said something like, octagons have more sides than squares, that's a rational claim, right? Because you're thinking about the concept of octagon, okay, that's 8 sides, and then you're thinking about the concept of square, okay, that's 4 sides, and then you're thinking about numeric relations, okay, 8 is more than 4. Ah, yes. So octagons, by definition, necessarily have more than 4 sides and therefore have more sides than squares, right? That's all a rational process. And again, do not think of this. I'm going to say this 18 times, and I'm sorry. Do not think of this as meaning correct, because rational claims aren't always correct. All triangles have 7 sides. All triangles have 87 sides. No square has 4 sides. Those are all rational claims, and they're not true, right? They're false. So the terms empirical and rational do not refer to something's truth value. Rather, they refer to the type of thing the claim is about and the means of verifying the claim. That's all it means. So if you think about it, you'll see why these claims don't work if you thought about them in this way. So if you take that example I gave just before about the tree blowing outside my window, and I said to you, hey, the tree branch outside of my window is blowing right now. You know that that's not a rational claim because you can't prove that or disprove that, so to speak, by just thinking about the concepts mentioned in the claim. Like, it's not like you could be like, if I just think about the concept of tree and the concept of blowing and the concept of window, then I could just know whether or not what he said about the actual tree outside of his window is blowing. You can't do that, right? This is about particular concrete items out in the world, and these are about general abstract concepts and relations between the concept. So these ones you need to go out in the world, these ones you just think about definitions and their relations. So in the last lesson we talked a little bit about objectivity and subjectivity. Both of these types of claims are, again, objective, right? They're either true or they're false, and they're true or false regardless of your feelings about them. The tree is either blowing or it's not blowing. The cup is either containing liquid or containing no liquid. 2 plus 2 is either 4 or it's not 4, right? It's kind of a binary thing, right? True or not true. And that's not to say that, all dichotomies are actual, right? Or are good. No, it's just to say that some dichotomies are real, some binaries are real, and truth is one of those things. So I mentioned, I think in the last lesson too, like this has something, the objective subjective distinction has something to do with mode of access. So like if I make a claim about the tree in my yard, that's something that any person would be able to hypothetically access and see if it was happening or not, right? Everyone can access it. Similarly, when you think about concepts, and I talk about, if I've known you, remember when we talked about last video that it was a contradiction to say, I've known you for 7 years, but I've known you for less than 3 years. Like, that's a contradiction, and that's actually a rational claim, and it's incorrect and contradictory merely by thinking about the definitions involved. And the thing about definitions and concept is these things are also publicly accessible, in a manner of speaking, right? Anyone can access the concept if they think about it, right? It's about something that is intersubjective, we say. And I hesitate even saying that because you're going to hear the word subjective. But no, the inter means it's shared across all people in the shared, publicly accessible world. Okay, but what about subjective things, right? What about preferences we mentioned last time? Or what about, personal values or things like that? Well, there's this third type of claim. And I'll erase these two because my board isn't big enough, unfortunately. And the third type of claim we could just call a value claim, right? Value claims are like, I think sushi is better than pizza. Or, the example I always use is like Biggie is better than Tupac. Or Pink Floyd is better than Led Zeppelin. Or, anything that has to do with a value judgment, a judgment about, what would we say? Preference, I think that's a good way of putting it. So if we do ask the two questions, what is it about and how can it be verified, falsified? It's pretty interesting. So the aboutness we've already covered, right? We say value claims are about personal preferences. What about verification and falsification? Well, they can't, right? They can't be verified or falsified. Why can't they be verified or falsified? Well, because to be verified or falsified means to be confirmed as being actual or not. Means to be true or not. But liking a band more than another band is not like true or false. It's just I like this thing better, right? You could very well say, no, I think Led Zeppelin is better than Pink Floyd, and I would say, well, I think you're wrong, but that's not a thing that's true or not true. Now, of course, things that start out as value claims can be made into objective claims. Like, let's say the conversation shifted and I said, Pink Floyd is better than Led Zeppelin because they utilized more production effects, and this was very innovative and spawned different genres of music, and they sold more records, and the musical parts are more non-standard or something like that. All of those things are objective claims, like use the number of production techniques, and we could like look at each one, sold more records, the music is not in standard like time signatures or something like that. Those are all objective claims. So if I say those things, those are empirical claims that are objective and are either true and or false, right? But the value comes in when I say, and I think those things are better than whatever, right? So a list of criteria is an objective thing, but attaching value to a particular list of criteria is when things get subjective, right? So at the end of the day, we could say, and I hate this word, but the value claims are the opinion ones, right? Like, in my opinion, like, I don't know, Reservoir Dogs is a better movie than Pulp Fiction or something like that, right? Whereas the other things are not opinion, so to speak. I think that's it for today. So you want to walk away with a couple things. You want to remember that there are different types of claims, that the type is determined by what the claim is about and how one would go about verifying it or falsifying it. You want to know that there are three types of claims. The first two are objective. The one is empirical. The other is rational. And you want to know what that means and what examples of each are. And you want to know that the third type of claim is a value claim, that those are about personal preferences and are more subjective. So, like, you can even question whether or not they're claims in the same way. I think that's fair. They're more gray. So I think that's it for today. This was definitely a shorter video than the last one. And I mentioned that's because that stuff last time was so fundamental and everything else is building on top of that. So, as always, if you guys have any other questions, email me or sign up for office hours. I'll see you around.